Soundstrat.
What is up? Welcome to another edition of SacTown Movie Bus Television. Once again, it's Kier, and today I'm in the studio with Matias Bombal, who is a local film critic, among many other things, and we're going to get into a conversation. How you doing today, Matias?
Oh, great. I'm so glad to be here with all of your wonderful friends that love SacTown Movie Buffs. In the 3 years it's been around, I've noticed a lot of activity and a lot of genuine enthusiasm about movies,
Absolutely.
which for this old man is really beautiful to see. So more power to you, and thank you so much for having me.
I'm glad to have you on the show. So you were one of the people that I definitely wanted to talk with because you've been in the Sacramento market for numerous years, and I know you've been a film critic for a very long time as well. So can you kind of just walk us through how that came about? How did you get into film criticism and many of the other hats that you wear here in the local community?
Well, as you know, as a broadcaster, there are certain times in your life when you have things that are going a certain way, and then all of a sudden things change drastically, and you have to reinvent yourself.
Correct.
If there's anything true about filmmakers, film reviewers, anything connected with the theater business, there's reinvention happening all the time. It goes way back to the beginning of the movies. There was the arrival of film, then there was the arrival of color, the arrival of sound, and each time with each new technology, everybody had to reinvent the wheel and start all over again.
Correct.
And until they learned how to get going again. So I was at a crucial point 13 years ago where I had been in the theater business working in many theaters, and suddenly those opportunities dried up because the movie industry went from film to digital.
Right.
And suddenly I had a tremendous knowledge on actual movie film prints and how they were made and how to cut them together and how to run the old carbon arc film projectors. I was not in the union, I was in management, but I certainly knew and worked with those things. And that overnight, it was gone. And so I figured, how can I channel what I've learned and the movies I've loved since I was a little kid
Right.
in a new way, and that's how I started reviewing movies. And so in 2013, Matias Bombal's Hollywood was born, where we started doing these online movie reviews that were done in an old-fashioned way on an old set, looked like an old radio studio.
And I like the look of it.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you very
Yeah.
much. And so we did that for a long time, and then I had a tragic fire in 2017, lost the studio.
Oh.
And from that point forward, I just did it on radio, which was essentially what I was doing anyway on TV.
But just in the studio.
So now it's just audio. But that's how the movie review started. But the love of movies,
It's been your entire life.
It's a whole other thing. You know, I'll tell you, I was at the Elmwood Theater in Berkeley, California. I was 3 years old. My mother took me to see Walt Disney's Fantasia. Now, this was the 69 psychedelic re-release.
Right.
And I was scared to death. Because that creature, Chornobor, gets on top of that mountain and
Right.
he looks like a bat. It was very
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 terrifying.
difficult. So what did I do? I'm a little kid. I'm scared. You know, I didn't hide under the seat. I looked around behind me and I noticed there was a beam of light that came from this little square window and it went across over my head and down to the screen. And I figured out at 3 years old, the magic isn't on the screen. It's happening up
It's all
there in that
happening
room.
behind. Yeah.
And then that's when I figured out that there was a magician involved telling these stories, and I wanted to know all about how that works. So that's when it
You
clicked
decided
for me.
to get into the...
And then there was no stopping. I wanted to know, you know, I'd have my mother drag me to the projection room so I could see the films running, and I loved Charlie Chaplin, you know, stuff that kids like in
For
that
sure.
era, you know, the 60s and 70s.
So how long did you work as a projectionist then?
Well, I've been a projectionist off and on in some theaters. Of course, at the Crest, we had the Moving Picture Machine Operators Union, Local 252,
Right.
later absorbed by Local 50 Stagehands. And we had a wonderful relationship with that union, so I was glad to give them work. They gave us all the old-timers. They came down, they repainted the projection room, they got everything running. They gave us a great rate, and it really helped us bring the Crest back in 1986 when we started to bring that back. At that time on K Street Mall, there was nothing. It was tumbleweeds. They hadn't even built light rail yet, you know. So
That would have been a quite different picture for
we
sure.
We started when there were still those concrete ponds that were up and down K Street, which is supposedly the Sierra Nevada mountain range in this sort of brutalist architecture and concrete. And that came out right around the time that we were doing it. And we started to bring life back downtown, so we were very proud of that. By 1989, we were showing movies like Gone with the Wind for its 50th anniversary, and there were lines around the block, sold out, every seat in that theater for 2.5 weeks.
Wow.
So that's quite a change from like 13 or 14
Yeah,
people. To
yeah. Well, now you can't even get a line for,
Right.
for an opening for
Right.
a major picture these
Well,
days.
in those days, there wasn't Blockbuster Video.
Right.
VHS was just starting. If it wasn't on TV, you had to ask a theater to show it.
Right.
And it was a golden age of revival movies and seeing classic films. In this town, there were so many great theaters, man.
Right.
You could go to the Showcase Theater, you could go to the Tower Theater, you could go to the J Street Theater, and they were changing double bills every 3 days.
So back in those
like my
days, it
film
was kind of
education.
like the old dinner and a movie. That's kind of what you would do. You would
Sure,
go,
or
yeah.
not, just stay there all day in the theater and just see these great films. And I was forever in the
We
theater.
call that binge watching today.
Right. But,
Yeah.
It was so much fun. I loved it.
So you're not from Sacramento originally, correct?
No, I was born in Santiago, Chile.
Okay.
My mother was an AFS student, American Field Service, and she went from Albany, California to Chile and enjoyed a year there, and then went back in 1966. She met my dad. They fell in love. They were married, and I came along about a year later. And Mom got homesick, so we came back. We were in Berkeley for a while. She was working for the state of California. My pop was teaching at UC Berkeley, and then she got transferred to Sacramento. So in 1976, I came here, and it's been my wonderful home ever since. So I love this town. It means a lot to me.
So you've been here since '76. I would hope that you would like it. So I know you and I have had a lot of conversations just about the changes in terms of like the filming industry and kind of what's been going on. And can you just kind of elaborate on some of the things that you've seen that have changed in, say, I don't know, let's just say the last 10 years? What are some of the major changes that you've seen in the film industry?
Well, I'm going to put it to you in the most simple way I can, and audiences don't get this because they're not in show business. They go to be entertained. It's all magical. They pay their money and they leave. And if it's a good movie, they like it. If they don't, they think it's horrible.
Exactly.
And then they complain that they've got to pay probably the price of their house mortgage for a bucket of popcorn and a soda. So, and I understand it costs a lot of money, but the movie industry is the only industry I've ever heard of where the supplier of the product, the studios, is trying to put the user of the product, the theaters, out of business.
Right. Yeah. No, that's exactly
They
correct.
have been greedy, and there was a time when movie studios. I remember the first Batman in '89, with of course Jack Nicholson and that Batman, which is iconic now for sports for comic book fans. I remember Warner Brothers in the first week wanted 110% of ticket sales. Now, you may wonder, how do you get 110%? That's all of the box office and 10% of the candy.
Yeah, where do you...
And you had to do that for 4 weeks, and then after week 4, they'd go to 90% of the ticket sales, and the following would be 80%. So that theater only made money from like 80% of their ticket sales to pay their operational costs, to pay the staff, the insurance on the building, all that stuff.
Exactly.
And so since that moment, really, the movie industry has started to plummet because the theater-going experience has just become less and less and less. Theater operators are not in the movie business. They're in the concession business.
I would agree.
And that's why the prices are so high. And I think a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
And that's why there are multiplexes instead of single-screen theaters.
Exactly.
Because if they've got to hold on to a movie and it's a dog for 4 weeks, they're going to put it in the smallest little shoebox theater they've got rather than the biggest
Yeah,
one.
it's always in that
and
little
that's
tiny
why
screen.
all those theaters have different amount of seats in them so they can jockey those things around. And then they strategically get those showtimes at 9:10, 9:20 to get that constant flow in front of the candy counter. It's a science, and it's the only way theaters stay open. But what happened? We had the pandemic, man. And then after the pandemic, we got very comfortable in our athletic clothes at home with a
absolutely.
martini, a beer, or whatever it is.
I think everybody did, and now it's been kind of harder to get people to go back out to theaters. Yeah, no, I agree.
We go to press screenings all the time, and those will be generally full because they try to give away more tickets to get word of mouth out.
They're just giving away.
And
but
they
then
give
after
us a
that,
little
it's
section in the press. But other than that, I'll walk into another auditorium after one of those shows because I'm curious.
And it's empty.
There's 10 people in there.
And it's
There's
always
13
empty
on a Friday or Saturday night.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate.
It's over.
Yeah, it's really...
It's over. And it breaks my heart because we like to see stories being told.
I do. And I like to be in a theater with a full amount of people. So full house,
because it totally
packed house.
changes the experience.
Yeah, it changes the experience for you versus going to something where it's
So you're asking about changes. The one thing that hasn't changed since the caveman days is we like stories.
Exactly.
We relate to stories about ourselves, about our people, about experiences to which we can relate. Those are the stories we like the most, of course.
Exactly.
Or adventure. Let us have a fantasy where we can go somewhere that we couldn't do in our own life, like fly through the air or be Indiana Jones and do all that cool stuff.
Right.
Or maybe be Spider-Man and just be as cool as it possibly can be to be cool. But the stories are the same. And in the caveman days, they just had those paintings on the wall, but the guy's pointing, see this, and the next painting, and that has been the consistent thing. So you look at the future of movies, the future of storytelling, we're always going to like stories. How we receive those stories, whether it be streaming at home or it's going to be in some new 3D AI way.
Right.
Fundamentally, it's about stories. So if a movie's going to be good, it has to tell a story we can relate to, and that's the movies we like the best. If it can't tell a story, then we're saying, what the heck is this?
Exactly. No, I agree. Well, it's been a great conversation. I definitely would love to have you back on the show again. We can talk a little bit more, and I definitely hope that things don't go south in terms of the movie industry. But
For both of us.
For both of us. But I thank you for being on the show, and we'll definitely have you back again if you want to come back, and we'll have more conversations about films.
This is a great pleasure for me, and I'm so excited about SacTown Movie Buffs. It's one of the great new things in our community.
Thanks
Congratulations.
so much. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you. And we'll be back again soon with another show for you. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.
And we're clear.
Perfect.
Soundstripe. Soundstripe.